Kicking it with KeKe. Kicking it with KeKe. Kicking it with KeKe. Full of personality. Switching up the storyline on God, we making history.
Writing books, changing lives, one day at a time. Put your problems to the side. Enjoy yourself. Free your mind.
Kicking it with KeKe.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Kicking It with KeKe, Life, Love, and all that other shit. I am your host, KeKe Chanel, award-winning author, lifestyle blogger, and certified life coach. Y'all know by now, because we in season 4, the whole premise of this podcast is about personal development. I believe that when we operate as our highest self, we just go through life and live it more abundantly. So today I have a special guest and she's going to come and share her story as well as her books and things like that. But y'all know how I do. I like to give my guests the opportunity to introduce themselves. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to you, Serena. Tell the people who you are and what you do. First of all, thank you for coming to kick it with me.
Yes, thank you. I'm excited. I've just seen, the work you've done. And like I said, I love your Monday shows on IG.
Thank
I have it on
you.
my calendar, like, all right, Kiki's on at this time. It's like a program in my phone. I have my different IG shows
I love that. Yes.
in my phone. So you're the Monday slot. Like, okay.
I love
So
it. I love it.
great. And you always have like the most amazing guests. And it just feels like we're all like just hanging out in a living room or a cafe or something. I don't feel like we're
Yeah.
in different time zones sometimes.
Right.
So yeah, I'm
I
excited.
appreciate you for saying that. I appreciate you for your support and tuning in because I keep seeing that name. I was like, okay, so she coming back. She becoming a regular. I love it.
Yes, I was like, oh, this is good. This is good content. And that's the other thing too. I love good, authentic shows. We got enough ratchet stuff out there. We got enough.
Don't we do? Don't we do? Yes.
So this is good like content and folks come on there and talk and you learn stuff. I was taking notes when you had the financial literacy coach
Oh
on
yeah,
there. So I
yeah.
was like,
Morgan. Shout out to Morgan. Yes.
I didn't take some notes with this girl. Okay, so
Yes.
so thank you. So introduction. All right, so I'm Serena Wills and I wear a couple of hats. I don't like saying I'm a jack of all trades because I tell people you should find your gift, your purpose, which is in everything. So I'm a national board certified health and wellness coach. And I also am an associate certified coach through International Coach Federation. So that's my health and wellness hat. And I do workshops on health and wellness topics. And I have a health and wellness coaching practice called Divine Right Wellness. So just like my IG name, Divine Right, is Divine Right Wellness. And there's a whole story behind Divine Right and how that name came about. It's a really interesting story. So I do coaching, individual coaching, group coaching, and I also have a workplace wellness program that is focused on stress reduction and self-care.
Nice.
So I tell people, don't call me if you want fitness classes. I know folks who could do that. I know folks who could do that, but I'm the one that's coming in and we're talking about meditation and mindfulness and mindful eating and real basic, like easy to reach self-care techniques that you could do, especially if you're on a budget, because folks, some of us don't have money to go to, the hot stone place and get our massage once a month or twice a month. I would love to, I used to, but for time, even just time. So that's my health and wellness coaching hat. And there's a story how I got to health and wellness coaching, because you couldn't tell me 10 years ago. I thought I knew my career. I thought I had it all laid out. And God said, no, like you have it partially right, but this is the rest of it.
Right.
And just how everything manifested.
Okay.
I'm also a published author, a self-published author. So I have 3 self-published poetry books.
Nice.
And the 4th one is coming out this November. So it's nice to be able to put a date.
Yes.
Finally. So November 2022 is book number 4. And before I was self-published, I was also in anthologies. I was in several anthologies before I began to self-publish my own books.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny how you plan to, I was planning for years to get published and thought I would go the traditional route. That didn't work. And then just learned all about the self-publishing, path. And, life happens because I thought I'd
Mm-hmm.
be self-published earlier in life and just didn't happen. But it happened when it was supposed to happen. And that's the blessing. So I'm an
Yes.
author, and with that, I also teach self-publishing classes. So I basically roll everything up, as to like what I learned, and I now teach other people how they can become self-published as well,
Nice.
and self-published on a budget. Because people are like, oh, I don't have like $10,000. I'm like, it's not going to take you
It's
ten
not
thousand dollars.
because I'm a book coach as well. Yeah, they
Yeah,
get in their
yeah.
own way.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So I teach them that, and just like from the beginning all the way through. So like all the way to writing the book and
Uh-huh.
accountability. We go
Uh-huh.
all the way from the starting line,
Right.
and then we go all the way to the book signing.
Right.
So that's I actually offer that through library systems. Organizations have hired me, sponsored me to do it. Actually, just did one workshop over the weekend at the Covenant House. So you just never
Nice.
know
Mm-hmm.
who's gonna call you
Right.
and say I'd like to have a workshop. So I do that, and I'm also a publishing coach. So I help some self-published authors who want to be authors need assistance
Mm-hmm.
with, okay, I need someone like an accountability partner, but
Mm-hmm.
steps you taught me, or you have these contacts, I don't have time, can you help me? So they hire me to
Right.
basically help them get them through that. So publishing coach, self-publishing classes, and I teach poetry workshops as well because I am a poet, a spoken word
Hey.
artist. So I actually teach, so I teach different forms of poetry. So I tell people there's over about 50 forms plus of poetry
Mm.
that we know of. I always tell people that we know of.
That
I'm
we
sure
know
there's
of,
more
yeah.
than that we know of. And I teach the different forms of the poetry to write. So I start with just bones, and we work our way up to the more complicated forms of poetry. So
Wow.
that's my professional.
That's
That's my
an
professional
amazing
hat.
resume. You hear me? That is an amazing
It's
resume.
that's the
Y'all.
professional side. And then just personally, I live in the Washington, D.C. area. We call it the DMV up here. Everybody's like,
Mm-hmm.
Department of Motor Vehicles? No. D.C., Maryland, Virginia. We always
Yeah.
get those jokes from people who don't know what the DMV means. So I'm
Yeah.
in the DMV area, but by way of South Jamaica, Queens, New York, born and raised New Yorker.
Nice.
And yeah, I've been out of New York for 25 years, which doesn't feel like that because New
That's
York's
why
right up the
I
road.
cannot hear that accent.
It turns off and on. I tell
Okay.
people it's certain words where people are like, you're from New York. And I'm like, yeah, but when I get to New York, it's something about it just turns right back on.
Right. I get
I have
it.
the out of state plates, but I get out the car and they're like, we're a little confused. It says Virginia, but you sound like us. I'm like, I'm from here.
Right.
But it turns off and on.
Yeah, that's usually how it is. But I'm a Southern girl at heart, and
Oh, I could tell.
Yes, I
could
cannot
tell.
hide it at all.
It's you and
Yes.
Toya and Anita. I'm like, these girls right here, these ladies, I could tell.
Yeah,
Y'all are like Southern girls. Yes.
absolutely. Like Louisiana. I'm in Louisiana, and they're from Louisiana as well.
And I tell people there's a certain, because I used to have to go to work a lot in New Orleans. That was one of my after school sites. And I used to
Nice.
love that they would send me out there to do trainings. I'm like, oh, I'll go to New Orleans. I tell people out of the whole entire South, Louisiana has a certain accent that no other Southern state has. Like you could tell she's from Louisiana, not just the South. And they're like, how do you know? I'm like, when you spend time down there, there's certain words.
Right.
I was like, especially when y'all say, well, to me it's baby, but y'all like,
baby.
Really? Yes.
Right.
And I'm like, yes, there we go. There's certain words where I'm like, that's Louisiana. That's it.
I
Don't talk
love
like
it.
that in Alabama or the Carolinas or Georgia. It's just Louisiana. So
yes.
and
Well, I love Louisiana. I'm glad that Louisiana was good to you when you came
oh my
here.
goodness. I had to start an after school program down there with grant money when I used to work nonprofit field. And that was one of the most rewarding jobs And I used to have to fly out there 5 times a year. I'm like, y'all can send me to New Orleans 5 times a year. Every time from the minute I got off that plane, they would pick me up and they already have food ready for
Oh,
me. I tell people,
nice.
talk about Southern hospitality. Like they give you per diem money
Mm-hmm.
for food, and I would
Mm-hmm.
come back money in my pocket. Like I'm like, they won't allow you sometimes. So like I
It's
had
an
to tell
insult. It's an insult.
it's an
Yeah.
insult. They were
Uh-huh.
like, no, we know you want to go out. We'll take you to the right places. So that's the other thing too. We'll take you where you need to go.
Yep.
But they
Yep.
loved my after school site and the staff, they loved cooking for us. So
Nice.
yes, and when my
But
mom came with me that time, oh my gosh, my mom was like, we need to retire in Louisiana.
it looks
I'm used to this.
yes, you could get used to it really, really quickly.
Oh
Really,
my
really quickly.
gosh. From the
But
first trip, I was like, this
yes.
place is beautiful. Just
Well,
beautiful. The
I,
people, just the culture, everything.
it is. It's a different vibe. It's a different vibe, and I'm glad to be a part of that. And we gonna
Yes,
get
yes,
on
you
into
are.
this podcast.
Yeah,
Before we get started and talk about you and all of the great things that you do, because you just told us a lot. She just
I
told us
did.
a y'all, didn't you, y'all? I like to ask the question because it is a personal development podcast. Like, what
Okay.
does personal development mean to you?
Wow. So, I tell people for me, personal development for me, it came a lot differently than I thought it would come. So for example, I'll just, my other part of me is I'm a Lyme disease survivor. I knew my career path. I
Mm-hmm.
thought I knew, like, oh, I'm going to be this, I'm going to be that. And it's a health and wellness path. And personally, some internal battles. I tell people
Mm-hmm.
when you think you know your path, and then something like with me, Lyme disease happens, and mine was the way it manifested in my body. It went from me being a marathon runner, African dancer, traveling the world, spoken word artist on stages, to being bedridden 2 months after a tick bite, not
Wow.
knowing I was bitten by a tick. I didn't even know I was bitten. And
Right.
I didn't know I had Lyme disease. So I was misdiagnosed 10 times. So that's the other thing. 10 times
10
from
times.
October
Yeah.
1st,
Mhm.
2012 to about December 1. And then that was 9 times. The 10th time came after the diagnosis from a doctor who didn't believe I had Lyme disease, even after I had a diagnosis. That's a whole story.
Uh-huh.
But I tell people that whole journey, talking about personal development and growth, it
Mm-hmm.
was between that and then when I was my mother's caregiver when she had ovarian cancer. And I tell people you really start to learn more about yourself sometimes in your darkest moments.
Right.
And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, I'm either going to survive this and get through this, or I'm going to crumble, okay,
Right.
and just give up.
Mm-hmm.
And crumbling was not an option. Even when my mom was sick with ovarian cancer and she was dying, she was like, you're going to still be here and I need you to be strong. But
Oh,
she said, no, it's going to take time, to be strong because I won't be here by your side. I
right.
won't, be here with you. And I tell people that's where a lot of growth for me happened and personal development. It didn't come out of, yeah, I went to workshops, classes. Yes, I have a master's, I have 2 master's degrees. I have
Mm-hmm.
all of that. And I learned a lot in those, but mine were was just life and just being thrown into roles like a caregiver, as her health proxy. And then it kind of helped prepare me. I didn't know I was going to get sick,
Right.
So when
Mm-hmm.
I got sick, I'm like, okay, I know how to somewhat maneuver the medical system, the health system, but mine was really involved and very complex. And in Lyme disease, period, is just so controversial.
Right.
So just sometimes having to just be your own advocate, and just saying, okay, I have to step up to the plate and advocate for myself and tell
Mm-hmm.
this doctor, this is what I'm dealing with, and this is how you're going to treat me. So I had to learn, I learned a lot, just personally through even just my other doctors, like my medical team. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, they are, as I was building my team, I was learning from them. And not just medically, but just personally.
Person. Mm-hmm.
And they were almost like mentors and coaches to me. So here I was, not even knowing I'm going to be thrown into like personal growth, development, and all this other stuff while battling Lyme disease. And while, I was my mom's caregiver. And, being a single mom, I have a son, he's 11.
Mm-hmm.
And even that, I tell people, any single parent, shout out, dads, moms, it's not easy.
Right.
It's not easy. And then to have a lot of that going on at the same time, battling Lyme disease, I'm a single mom,
Yeah.
what all is going on, but that is personal development to me. It really depends on the person, your path. You may say, I'm going to take, like I said, you can take these master classes, I'm going to register for this. And that is a way to develop, that is a way to grow and to learn. But a lot of a lot of my best lessons came out of just life's journeys.
Mine too.
And what am I going to do with that?
Right.
So, with Lyme disease and even ovarian cancer with my mom, I said, I'm going to become an advocate. And I love to educate people as much as I can. And just to really share the real news, okay, not just bits and pieces what you're reading on the CDC's website or this government's website, but to, get actual survivors and those who are dealing with this and caregivers and family members to talk about what they've been through.
Right.
And a lot of them will say, we never thought we would see the other end of this, whether, your loved one was with you or not. And even with Lyme disease, I was so sick at one point. I didn't know there was a couple of times I really thought I was checking out of here, like had gotten all my paperwork together in order, had to tell my son's godmother, this is where everything is, just in case you have to come and get him.
Wow.
In case because I really was that sick,
Wow.
And I tell people it was during those moments where I learned who was in my corner, who was not. And I learned about some of the new people that God was delivering in my life and the why, and I'm like, how can they just be delivered? And I feel like they've been in my life for 10, 20, 30 years. And the ones who, some of them 10, 20, 30 years, a couple, not all, where are y'all at? And
Yeah.
because some just can't handle, your situation, as that was told to me once. So I was like, okay, just a way of saying it, So I learned a lot between friendships, family, just the whole medical community, holistic health, and just through that whole, like I said, 10 years, almost 10 years to the day, I was bitten by a tick. I have learned so much. And I look at where I was 10 years ago and just the growth,
Right.
and development over those 10 years. And my mom had passed February 2010. So that was only not that long before, I was sick. So I was going through a lot anyway before I got sick, and that also manifested just the way my sickness just was in my body. My doctor said, you were grieving, you lost your mother and your sister 2.5 years apart from each other.
Wow.
And then you had a child. That's a great thing. You had a great you had a child, but then you became a single mother because of a horrific breakup. And then you get bitten by this tick. My son was only 13 months old. And she said, that's a lot. So she said, when you got bitten, it's like your body was already imploding inside. This is my integrative health doctor. And she said, it's just so your physical just really started to match the internal. And I'm like, yep, you called it. So that's what that's a long-winded question, but that answer, but that's how I am developing and growing, just through what I'm learning in life, and just constantly making sure I am learning something every day. Every day.
Oh, I love that. I love that, because I'm all about this. Something that it's something that people can't take that away.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No. Like my grandmother told me, God rest her soul, when she was 96 when she passed. So when she had turned 96 in May of 2020, and she said, I'm still learning new things, and I'm 96 years old.
See, I love to hear it.
And I'm like, wow, because we were talking about something, and she was like, see that? She said, I learn something new every day. So it doesn't matter what age you are. She said, if you're not learning, you might as well not be here. That's what she used to tell me.
Right.
So it's okay.
Because you have to exercise that brain. That's a muscle. So if you don't exercise it, you can lose it at some point. Because as we age and life happens, and you just never know what type of situation that you might find yourself in. Because you never would have imagined that you would be bitten by a tick and have Lyme disease, be bedridden for 2 months. It's just you had to maneuver through your new normal.
Yeah, it was a new normal, and it just I just got slapped on me. Like I tell people, it was at mid-September. I was in the midst of training for my 6th marathon. So for me, running was normal. So if I went out there I would do 3 to 6 miles on average when I would go running. And I would run 2 to 3 times a week. And that was off season. So
Mm.
during like the marathon season, I would run more and you go like longer and longer miles.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew something was wrong between the one time I went running and it was supposed to be a 6 mile run. I couldn't even make it I was at mile marker 1 and I was completely out of breath.
Wow.
I was like breathless. And I'm like, and I had my son in the running stroller. So that was the scarier part. I have my 1-year-old out here.
Mm-hmm.
I feel breathless. It's my usual trail.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, everything is the same. Like, there's nothing different.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, well, it's the end of September. Maybe, the weather is changing a little bit, but never in my life had I been that short of breath.
Mm-hmm.
And even people on the trail were noticing, like, are you okay? I'm like, I'll just take my time walking back, to my car. I'm okay. Maybe it's just the allergies. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then when I went to African dance class in that same week, class is an hour and a half. I couldn't even make it past 30 minutes. And that was just the warm up.
Uh-huh.
So the warm up was wiped me out.
Mm-hmm.
And my, dance teacher said, maybe you have like a chest cold or something. Maybe something's like really in your chest. She said, between running and now this. I said, yeah, I'll go to the doctor and get checked out. And that was like symptom number 1 was the shortness of breath and unproductive cough. I would cough and nothing was happening. It was like nothing, like you felt this rattling, but nothing was coming up.
Mm.
And I tell people it just snowballed. It was like a snowball of symptoms, like a new symptom every week would just roll in and not leave. That's the thing.
Wow.
So
they would just come and stay.
They would just come and chill out. Like, okay, we're here. And all types of, I was in the ER a couple of times. Paramedics had to come and get me once. And I'm like, how do you go from being completely healthy to, like you said, bedridden? It was like a month. And then I forced myself to go back to work because I had to, because it was a new job. So I wasn't getting paid.
Right.
So I said, I'm like definitely ill, going to work. And my doctor of all like the FMLA papers, like I know she's brand new, but I need to make sure she's like, I gotta make sure you're gonna be protected. Cause she was like, people will just fire you on a whim.
Mm-hmm.
And she filled out this paperwork for me. I'm like, okay. And she said, I've seen it done. I've seen people just tossed out, like, oh, sorry, it's not working. And now you have no benefits.
Mm.
So yeah. And then like by that December, that's when the official diagnosis came in that I was highly positive for Lyme disease through my blood work.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot. Wow.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
lot.
Like I tell people, 90-something% of my son's life, I've been battling Lyme disease.
Mm.
Like now he's 11. So
Mm-hmm.
he was 1 when I got bitten. So yeah.
Wow. And so, how did that affect the relationship that you had with your son during that time?
Well, he was so young, thank goodness.
Mm-hmm.
And I would have to bring him to like a lot of appointments, like I'll do the day appointments, but like I said, I have an integrative health doctor. Thank God she's open on Saturdays. And sometimes she would open up on Sundays for people. She was that woman. She's that person.
Nice. Yes.
And I would have to bring him with me. And mine it actually impacted my central nervous system. So that was when I got an MRI of my brain, December of 2012, because half of my body felt weaker than the other half. And she wanted to make sure I didn't have a stroke or anything like that. And I said, okay, so I'm sure my brain is fine. That's what I'm saying. I'm fine.
Mm-hmm.
And I went and literally, it wasn't even the day after the MRI. They were calling her back saying, please call your patient because her MRI came back abnormal. And I said, what came back abnormal? So she called me into her office and I'm glad I was sitting down, and because I literally almost passed out when she said, you have an abnormal MRI of your brain. And I said, what do you mean abnormal? And she said, well, it's inflammation of the brain. You have 13 lesions.
Wow.
And she said the radiologists, because they have to, they don't have to, but they kind of share what they're seeing, of course. But it was the last line was the clincher. And it said, worrisome for this age group, possible diagnosis of multiple sclerosis. And that's when I almost passed out. Because I was like, I said, can you say, and she was like, no. She had to call her nurse, get me some water. I was hyperventilating, I was sweating. And she said that was actually she had put together all my other paperwork from all the other misdiagnoses. She literally read through every one. And she said, I really think you have Lyme disease. And she just did this off of knowledge. of Lyme disease. She said, I haven't done blood work yet. And she said, sometimes it doesn't show up in blood work. But she said, I've seen this in other people, even the abnormal MRI of the brain, of Lyme disease. And I'm like, a little tick can cause this much drama. She said, yep. Yep. She was like, it sure can. And sure enough, we went to the lab that day. I, did the blood work, and the next week came back highly positive.
Wow. Wow.
But yeah, so that my central nervous system is still, that takes a long time to heal. So I still have I have a few symptoms left. My symptoms are not in remission, full remission. The rest of them are. I had like 30 something symptoms at one point. So to go from that to about 5 or 6, is good. And if I think about maybe 2 or 3 of those are tied to my central nervous system because it's still kind of in flux. But my brain has healed some, which is nice. We like to see a healing brain.
Right.
And as my neurologist calls it, a quiet brain. So he says, if the MRIs are the same from year to year, it's stable. So I'm like, we like stable and we like quiet.
Yeah.
So,
I never heard. I have to do some research on that.
Yeah, it's and there's a lot of other things. I learned so much, again, personal, just growth, period. Like what causes lesions in your brain? Like that was and even my doctor was saying some people who just suffer from chronic headaches can get lesions. He said some people who suffer from nothing. He said it could be a lot of stress. He said it can cause lesions in the brain. So he says not, an exact like, oh, she has this, so she must have lesions in the brain. He said it could be, headaches, migraines.
Yeah, and I have migraines, so don't scare me. Oh my goodness, I need to go get.
He's had people that have migraines and they have no lesions. So he said it's just, just
one of those things, huh?
It's one of those things. And he said, I've been fighting for years. He said, I always thought that, he said, like you get a regular checkup of your body. He said, I really think that people need to get regular checkups of their brain. He said it would prevent so much strokes, but all of that. And I'm like, you're right. It would really prevent a lot of what people go through. It's like they find out after, But he says, they're not going to do that because
I had a guest on, and she's a licensed counselor, and she was talking about how mental health plays a lot into the physical side of the body, and a lot of people don't look at it like this. She said, getting a regular checkup can make a big difference in your mental health because your hormones can be thrown off, or you can have chemical imbalances and things like that. And I was like, you know what? I never looked at it like that.
Yeah.
But it's a lot to think about. I know that's scary. That's scary. And I thank you for listen, I thank you for sharing your journey. I know that it's it's kind of hard to talk about it because people don't understand, and putting yourself out there, making yourself vulnerable. It takes a safe space. I'm glad that you feel comfortable enough with me. Listeners, I am here with Serena Wills, and she is sharing her journey of fighting Lyme disease. And we're about to get into like the national, being a national board certified health and wellness coach. Let's talk about how you got into that. Did the diagnosis with Lyme disease go hand in hand with that, or were you doing it before, or how did that come about?
Well, it's funny because I was working at a performing arts center. I won't say their name. I was working at a performing arts center. And like I said, I was in the nonprofit field, really thought I knew my future. Like I thought, okay, the next whatever years I'm going to do this, be retired here, And of course, always being an author, that was just hands down. That's what I'm going to do. But even how God shaped me being an author, like I thought I was going to write books and call it a day, not workshops, delivering poetry classes, like he's like really taken it and just, I'm like, I have to be obedient and listen. Now the coaching, it was funny because here I am battling Lyme disease. Like I said, I have an integrative health doctor. I'll just call her Dr. M. And she is absolutely phenomenal. I tell people every day, that woman saved my life. I don't think I'd be here without her. I would be debilitated without her. And from day one, before we even knew what was going on, she was the woman who walked me to the elevator. My visit with her was supposed to only be like an hour. It was like 3.5, 4 hours long. And she walked me to the elevator, gave me a hug. And she said, we are going to get through this together. I am not going to see you go anywhere. You are staying here. You have to. That's why I said, I feel so sick. I feel like I'm dying. She's like, you're not going anywhere. And she
Right.
was like,
Yeah.
and that was our first meeting. Like she
Mm.
said, I promise you, we're gonna help each other out. We're gonna build a team, and you're gonna get better. And that was Thanksgiving week 2012. And that woman is still in my life to this day.
Wow. That's
So she's still my
amazing.
doctor. She's
Mm-hmm.
still my doctor, and even helped my son out with a couple of things.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, here I am. I would go to her office, and like I said, she's an integrative health doctor. For those who don't know what integrative health is, she's an internist,
Mm-hmm.
so she's got her medical degree and everything. But integrative means she's integrating in natural, holistic way
Holistic.
to
Mm-hmm.
heal. So a lot of vitamins, mineral. She does vitamin IVs. I had to do a peroxide IV to clean my blood. So that was part of my regimen. Peroxide IV and a vitamin IV infusion every week. Every week. I was getting 2 IVs a week.
Mm.
And I had IVs for 14 months straight.
Wow. Mm.
So it like kind of dwindled. Like it started with 2 a week. Then as I was getting better, we went to like, let's try 1 a week and see how my body does until we got to like 0.
Mm-hmm.
But while I was there, she had all of these videos. She keeps like videos, DVDs, and she has a TVs in like the IV rooms. And I'm like, well, I'm going to sit here, and, I might as well watch something,
Mm-hmm.
that's going to be. And she always put on something educational. And, because I'm dealing with Lyme disease, she would find videos, and she introduced me to other practitioners out there. Like I had heard about Queen Afua, but I didn't really know a lot about Queen Afua, even though she's based out of New York. And she had her DVDs there. I was like, oh, I gotta watch this woman. I
Mm-hmm.
forgot her. And just watching those videos just fed my soul. It fed me in so many ways. And it just showed me, I'm like, I wish I would have known this when my mother was here. And like
Right.
just the different lessons I was learning, because my mom wanted to learn more about holistic ways to health and naturopathic ways, and she just didn't get a chance to. And just
Mm-hmm.
even your diet, that's the first thing from the first meeting with my doctor. I will never forget that meeting. It was already like 3-4 hours long. All right, so that's enough, right? But she said, she said your body, I could tell, is probably inflamed. She said you're sick, whatever is inside your body, just like it's like an atomic bomb went
Mm.
off.
Mm-hmm.
So she said, we're going to start tackling this with your diet. That was the last thing I thought she was going to talk about was food. I'm thinking antibiotics, what you
Yeah.
going to give me, pills. And she was like, no. She was like, what's your typical diet? And I'm like, oh, I eat healthy. I'm a marathon runner. And I eat fruits and vegetables and this, that, and the third. She said, okay. She was like, do you eat grains? Do you eat gluten? Do you intake dairy? Do you drink alcohol? And so we'll have wine sometimes. And I say, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I drink, dairy and, and all that, gluten. And I was like, well, okay, I've heard of gluten, but can you tell me what gluten is, And so she said, you're not going to probably like me, but she said, you have to go gluten-free, dairy-free, low refined sugars, low to no refined sugars, no alcohol. And I had already gotten off of red meat because it really wasn't cooperating with my body. And she said, I'm
Same.
glad you
Mhm.
listen to your body, because some people still try to like force the
Mhm.
issue. And they say, I'll
Mhm.
just take these little like pills or
Mhm.
supplements so I can eat the meat. And she
Mhm.
said, it's the meat and your body's not agreeing. And
Mhm.
she said, sure enough, she was like, I'm sure if you went to another country and probably ate their meat, you'd probably be fine. It's this country. And
This.
she was like,
Mhm. Mhm.
she was like, even the free range
Mhm.
chickens and
Mhm.
all that stuff.
Yeah.
I can't even eat chicken anymore. So
Me either.
that was 2 years ago in the pandemic. Really? We going through this? Like I
That's
need
when
my comfort
that's when
food.
mine started. That's when I noticed that it was not agreeing with
Yes.
me either. So yeah, I sneak
I'm
it in
like,
every now and then. I
yeah,
suffer from it. It's just not worth it, but I just still love it.
yeah.
But
And it was
yeah.
crazy because in the beginning of 2020, I turned 45. And I remember I love Peruvian chicken. It's like
Mm-hmm.
this rotisserie, charcoal broiled chicken.
Mm-hmm.
So we had all of that. And I was fine. It
Mm-hmm.
was April, I'll never forget, April 2020, me eating chicken. We're in a pandemic. I'm like, okay, I need some comfort food.
Uh-huh.
I was like, because they said these kids are going to be out of school for maybe 2-3 weeks, and they talking about end of school year. What do you mean he's not going
Yeah.
back to school? All right, so what do you mean? Like, what are you saying to me? Like,
That turned into months real quick.
Months and years. Like, okay,
Yeah.
okay. And I remember eating the chicken, not knowing it was a chicken. So I remember because one of my symptoms is shortness of breath. So I'm thinking, all right, well, I'm stressed. Stress sometimes kicks in, the shortness of breath. But I'm still eating the chicken, not thinking it's the chicken. And then going to different doctors and talking to people. And then one day I realized, okay, let me eat this chicken. Like I purposely bought chicken. I said, I feel fine, but let me eat and see how I feel. And as soon as I ate the chicken, I became short of breath. My back was spazzing. It's like I get back spasms. It's like my back gets tight. And I'm like, and this is the free range,
Organic.
Yeah, hormone free, whatever they want to say.
Yeah.
And I said, it's the chicken. And it just clicked. I was like, I don't need to go to a doctor. I don't need to go to a website. And then I realized without eating chicken, I started to feel better.
Right.
But I was like, I love chicken. Like, what do you mean I can't eat chicken? I'm home with my child. I don't know what I'm doing. Am I going back to work? Is he going back to school? And now I can't eat my comfort food. I can't eat my chicken and rice too. I had to give up rice. So the rice was the next one. And my integrative health doctor had told me about that before. She was like, I could tell you sneaking rice. You're not going to tell me. She's like, I know you're not going to tell me, but she said, Miss Wills. I love when she called me Miss Wills. You may eventually have to stop eating rice. Because she said, I don't think your body is breaking it down. And she only knew that because I used to do colon hydrotherapy. And that's a great way. You want to talk about detoxification. To do some colon hydrotherapy. And the colon hydrotherapists, I mean, I really give them props because I can't look at my own stuff, let alone somebody else's stuff.
Right. I know.
So they could tell what was not broken down. And then they're reporting it to my doctor because they work for my doctor. And they're like, we saw some grains of this. And I was like, no, wait.
How much they make doing that?
Like, you didn't have to tell me that you saw rice in there. Like, you could have kept that to yourself. Like, because I like rice. I didn't need her knowing I was eating the rice. Okay.
Yes.
But I wonder how much they make. So I'm like, you gotta.
Yes, because that's a job that I just wouldn't be able to do.
And it's nothing to them. Like they just, it was funny because my particular colon hydrotherapist, she had like 6 kids. So she said after changing 6, she was like,
I guess so. I guess.
She was like, I guess this is my calling. She was like, I've seen so much in my life. So
yeah.
I said, but now you don't have to, like you could like cut that. But anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I had to eventually years later, I had to give up rice. And I haven't eaten rice since 2020. So the chicken and rice both had to go out the window at the same time.
Listen, I mean, it's a lot. It's because I went on a lifestyle change too, and I dropped 65 pounds.
Wow.
And so I cut out a lot of meat. I cut out processed sugar. I cut out a lot. I drank a lot of water, fruits, vegetables. I would do a lot of, like fish, seafood and stuff like that. And then I realized you ain't supposed to have all of that. So it's just, what am I going to eat at this point? But that's when I noticed I would eat chicken, sporadically. And I would feel horrible. And my stomach would bloat and all of that stuff too.
Yeah, that too.
Chicken. And my brother, because he's a health nut, said, you need to try some organic free range chicken. Tried that, same thing.
Yeah, me too. I tried organic, free, you name it. It didn't matter.
Yep.
So I'm like, okay.
So the hardest thing for me was dairy. I still eat some because I love yogurt. Because I eat yogurt and granola with fresh fruit and stuff.
Yeah.
But my family love cheese. Like if you know me, you know my family love cheese.
Oh my gosh.
But I find myself I don't really miss it like that. I'll crave it every now and then, but
there's so many substitutes now that taste just as good. And my thing was ice cream in a particular brand. So when she told me about all these dietary restrictions, I'm going back home and I'm looking at my pantry and refrigerator and freezer. Oh, and she said no processed foods. That was the other thing. So she was like, I was like, well, I get like the meal in the bags from like Bird's Eye. And she was like, no. She was like, have you read the sodium content and this and that? And the third, I'm like, no, it's because it's vegetables and it's this. And I'm just looking at the,
Yeah.
And she said, just flip that bag over and you get home.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at the sodium in some of these things. I'm like 600-700 milligrams or 500 milligrams. And, I'm like, this is crazy.
It's
And I was
just too
telling her about,
much.
yeah, like, she said, I know you have like some, rashes. I said, you have eczema. And she said, I guarantee you with this whole shift in your diet, your eczema will go away. Like she like promised me on that day. I was like, that would be a trip because I've had eczema since I was a child. Since like I was a toddler. And she said, I really think it's the food you're eating that's really inflaming the eczema. But my thing was dairy, and I love Ben and Jerry's. Shout out to Ben and Jerry's ice cream. And a particular flavor, Cherry Garcia ice cream was my favorite. And I had, of course, 2 of them things in the freezer. And she's telling me no more ice cream, no more dairy. And I'm like, you know how much Ben and Jerry's cost? I was
Yes.
like, and I'm like, okay. So I remember calling some friends. I said, I can no longer drink wine, this, that. So come to my house. One friend lived in the basement of my apartment and of my complex. He came upstairs within 5 minutes, cleared out the wine. He just took all the wine. And I was like, okay. So friends were coming to the door that night getting food. And I'm like, please, because I just want to start, fresh. And then some would bring food over to me, like, we don't know what type of gluten-free stuff. But that started me with Lyme disease, just watching like all the DVDs, the dietary restrictions, the mental health, the emotional health I had to address. She said, you went through a horrific breakup, you lost your mom, you lost your sister, she said, you've been through a lot, harboring a lot of those feelings naturally, especially the grieving, part. So going to therapy and counseling, so all of that was part of the journey. And I started to feel a shift. And I remember saying, I would love to like get in the health and wellness field, but I don't know where or how. And I was like, maybe I'll be a nutritionist. And then I looked at all the things you need to do to become a nutritionist. And I did try. I will say I tried. That was actually my first major when I went back from my master's. I said, oh, I'll go for clinical nutrition. I couldn't even pass chemistry. So, because they make you take a chemistry class.
Got it, yeah.
And then the for real question was, of course, when I have my close friends like, you wouldn't really like to cook like that, Serena. So how are you going to be a nutritionist? Like, how are you going to do cooking demos and food? And you don't even really like to cook, period. And I'm like, it is a chore for me. So I said, okay. I said, I would like to do something that integrates nutrition, integrative health, wellness. And I learned about health and wellness coaching. I knew about coaching, the life coaches, but I had not heard about health and wellness coaches. And that, there's now a master's program and you could become now board certified. And I just completely fell in love with the whole program. It's like everything I wanted to do rolled up, from mindful movements. I learned about Qigong and Tai Chi, which helped me heal as well, meditations, yoga, but even just the nutritional aspects, just everything, mindfulness. And
yeah, I'm certified in mindfulness too.
Oh my gosh. I tell people John Kabat-Zinn is just my man. He's the godfather of mindfulness. I would love to just sit and eat breakfast with him one day mindfully, of course, because we can't just eat and chew real quick with him.
Right.
You gotta chew that whole blueberry, okay? You don't just pop in your mouth with him.
And people don't understand that mindfulness is a big thing. Like everything, you have to be mindful of everything. Yeah.
Everything. And I teach mindful eating workshops, and there's people in there that go from, I can't remember what my food tasted like for lunch. Like I think I knew what I had, because that was the first question. Oh, what you had for lunch?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, I can answer this real easy. And they're really trying to think what they had for lunch, or did they even taste their food going down?
Russian.
Chew your food, like really, really chew. And it just makes you think, even when you grocery shop, just how you mindfully grocery shop, looking at labels, and is this going to agree with you? And then think about the other people in your house, so that's how I got into coaching. Was I think God was pushing me in that direction after my mom had passed away, but I didn't hear the call at all. Like, I knew
Yeah.
I wanted to be an advocate for ovarian cancer awareness and, it was like, GYN cancers. That I heard, but
Mm-hmm.
not I want you to be in the health and wellness field.
Feel. Mm-hmm.
That I didn't hear. I was like, no, I'm going to go back to my job in the nonprofit field and do all this and that and the third. But I did get into health and wellness coaching. And the way I found my graduate school was I was a patient before a student
Wow.
because they have a nature care center inside the school. I didn't even know they were a school.
Wow.
I was going there to be treated because I finally found a nutritionist and she's also an herbalist. I love herbalism. So she's an herbalist too. And I'm driving up to this building. It's like tucked away in this real quiet neighborhood. I'm like, what is this place? And they're like, oh, this is also a graduate school. And we, we teach health and wellness coaching, health and wellness promotion, nutrition. And I'm like, this is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
It still didn't click with me that I
Right.
wanted to do health and wellness, but I was going there to be treated and to see her.
Mm-hmm.
And, the more visits I went and I talked to her about it. She said, oh, yeah, I teach here. My husband teaches here, and we can send you some information. And 2.5 years after that visit, I was a student. And I tell people I walked in as a patient and I tell people I walked out an alumni. That's what I tell people. I walked out
Yes.
alumni. How does that happen? But
And
how
that
things
says a
happen.
lot. That says a lot about them.
Yeah, it is amazing. And they
Yeah.
said we loved your testimony that you
Mhm.
were here very, very ill. You were a patient. And it's so funny because the same guy who sits at the front desk when I was a patient,
Mhm.
when I became a student and I graduated, he said, I remember when I first met you and how you looked. And he said, you just looked, he said, I just wanted to just get up and give you a hug,
Oh.
And I said,
Mhm.
yeah, I was very, very sick. He
Mhm.
said, the fact you drove yourself here, see, it was a 45-minute drive, but I was determined because I really wanted to meet this. Or she happened to be 45 minutes to an hour away. And
Mhm.
so I just took my time going back. But when he saw me graduate and he said, I remember when. And I said, yeah, that was 2013. I had graduated 2018. So he was able to see the 5 years.
Wow.
And he said, yeah, you have come such a mighty and long way. He said, that's not but God.
Right.
He said, nothing.
I was just
He said,
about to
nothing but
say that.
God led you here.
Yep.
He said,
Mhm.
and I went back for another program and I've done now I've been invited to do panels there. So I've done panel discussions on health and wellness coaching. And every time I tell my story, there's somebody out there crying. And they're
Mhm.
like, you walked in a patient. I said, I was very ill.
Mhm.
I said, you couldn't tell me this was a graduate school. You couldn't tell me I was going to be a health and wellness coach.
Right. That's a great testimony. And it's the
You couldn't tell
way
me anything.
it's a way to draw people in by your story. And then
Yes.
going from
Yeah.
being a patient to, like you said, an alumni. Like
Yeah.
I love that. I love
Yes.
that. Look, I could talk about wellness and health and all that all day, but since we'll be here all day, we're gonna talk about these
I know.
books. Tell everybody about the
Okay.
books. Let's talk about your
Okay.
books, being the author side of it.
Yeah, so being an author is such a blessing. I've been writing since I was a child. I was a very shy girl. We don't like really using the word shy. But I was really shy back then. I didn't like talking a lot. There
Mhm.
were some family members thought maybe she needs like a psychologist or
Mhm.
psychotherapy or somebody to talk to because why is she not talking? We know she could talk. And it was just it took me years and years to realize because we're children, we don't know.
Mhm.
As an adult, I realized I'm an empath, and I'm very like I could sense energy from the door. And
Yes.
as a child, I didn't know that's what I was dealing with.
And it's overwhelming.
It was overwhelming. So, and my mom it was so funny. She'd be like that extrovert introvert person.
Mhm.
So she was an African dancer. She would perform professionally for years. So she's out there. So I'm going to rehearsals with her shows. And sometimes you would think just being around the same folks, I would open up more. And sometimes I would still be like right at her side.
Mhm.
In the rehearsals, I would just sit right along the wall. I was that kid that wouldn't act up. You'll find Serena. There was a couple of us over there.
Yeah.
Now we're adults and we realize we're empaths. Yeah, we were shy, but we were children. We didn't know how to handle energy,
Right.
all that energy being around us. It was probably just so confusing and just so intimidating, just, So I just would be at her side. I kind of broke out of my shell freshman year of high school, sophomore year, like really breaking out. But I'll never forget my principal from elementary, who I'm still in touch with to this day. She's like probably almost 90. She's in her 80s. She's still teaching educators on like the model of her school she had back then.
Nice.
Everybody thought she was crazy, to have the model that she had. Oh, your model's not going to work, and now they're sweating her. So she was the one that would. It was teachers that would put journals in our hands, and I'll never forget when she was the one, the principal, who told my mother and family, Serena writes. She goes through a journal a month. She was like, we usually put a journal in a child's hand, and it takes them a semester. She's filling this book up in a month, and her stories are just like out of this world. So she's like, this is her voice. It's on paper and it's in journals. She was like, there's nothing wrong with her. She doesn't speak up in class. It's fine. They were like, we try to get her to participate more, but the stuff in her journals says it all. And so they were finding other ways for me to, bring, things out of me. So I've been writing since then. And in high school, I've had teachers still in touch with, even the teachers. And once I should have put money on it, Serena, I told you in 10th grade you would be published. And I told him, I remember that. It was 10th, 11th grade. He would say, I can't wait until you're published. And I'm like, okay. His name's Santiago. I'm like, all right, Santiago.
Right.
Right. That's cute. It's nice. I said, I know you like the story. It's a nice story. And sure enough, that story, it hasn't been birthed yet, published. But I was able to expand on that story, and it's a 4-part children's story now.
Oh, nice.
That will come out in the future. But I birthed that story in the 10th grade.
Nice.
So 1990. Okay. So you could tell me, and I tell people, just a font, you could tell it's not a computer. It was a, word processor.
Right.
So that's the original story. So I had to take it and then type it into a laptop.
Yeah.
It's just so funny to look at how we used to have to like write and operate. So
and then
so
the floppy disk came about.
I still have my discs in my closet. I need a disc reader. Right, all kinds of stuff on them. So so I've been writing for many, many years. And so it was 1997, I started writing poetry. That was the first poem I ever wrote, was 1997. It was right out of college. And I was like, it just hit me one day. And then the next poem hit, and the next poem hit. And I started writing poetry. I'm like, okay, I was already writing like children's stories and fiction. Now it's poetry. That would be like my main platform one day, would be poetry, not knowing. And then even when I was published in anthologies before I was self-published, it was short stories. They were nonfiction stories. And then eventually the poetry. When I moved I was in Dallas. That's a whole other story too. I lived in Dallas for 3.5 years.
I lived there for 4 and hated it. It was not good to me at all.
Oh, I'm sorry. So the reason why I moved, I tell people God used my ex-boyfriend as a vessel, just to get me out there. Because I was in the DC area and you couldn't tell us nothing. I was partying. I had just crossed Delta. I should put that in my little bio too. I'm a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority.
Okay.
All right. So we had just crossed 2001. So we out in the streets, we clubbing. And I know God was like, I need you to write. I need you to focus and write. It would happen in like little spurts. So I got reconnected with like my college sweetheart. And then he lived in Texas. So I picked up and moved. My family didn't like it. A whole bunch of people didn't like it. So I was like, oh, it's my life, and I moved out there thinking, he was the one and we're going to be together. And I'm like, no, God used him to get me out of the DC area for a moment. Like, I need you to focus, and you're not focusing here. There's too much going on. In Dallas, there's stuff going on there, but it's slower. The pace is slower. But I will say him, we didn't work out. That's fine. No regrets. But the rest was a blessing. I met so many artists. I met so many sorors out there. We're still friends and family to this day.
When did you live in Dallas?
I was there from late February 2006 to July 2009, beginning of July.
I was trying to see if we was there around the same time, but no, I was back in Louisiana by then.
Oh, you already left. Okay. And
Yeah.
it's so many, I met so many other folks that weren't from there. So those are the ones I clicked with first. They
Mm-hmm.
weren't from there. And actually, one of the first folks I met, she was actually a boss of mine. She's from New Orleans, Louisiana. And I told her from the interview, I knew you were from Louisiana. And she was like, how? And I told her about my trips to the New Orleans. And I said, you said the word baby. I said, of course, it's baby to me. I
Uh-huh.
was like, okay, she is from New Orleans. I know we have to keep it professional. This
Yeah.
is an interview. I'm trying to get this job. But if I get it, okay.
Mhm.
But yeah, I met so many other folks who weren't from there that, moved to Dallas for some reason.
Mhm.
They were there. And I met so many beautiful artists. Actually, each of my poetry books, um, all the artists I met, well, not all, but a good portion of them, you'll see them like throughout my poetry books because I have artwork inside my poetry books. So different poems have artwork
Mhm.
connected to it, and those are the artists I met when I lived in Dallas. And each
Nice.
book cover is from. Well, I have two different artists that did my three book covers. Even the fourth one, they're from Dallas. Well, I met them in Dallas. They're not
Mhm.
from Dallas.
Mhm.
Met them in Dallas. So I'm looking at everything God birthed, like I birthed through God. And even I got first published in Dallas, Texas. That was the first anthology in Dallas. So I'm looking at everything I did in Dallas. So just 3.5 years.
Mhm.
When I left Dallas, I was published in like three anthologies already. I was like, I
Nice.
came here not even published, period.
Yeah.
And when I left, I had books that were kind of like, oh, this one's kind of done, or this one has a few chapters, and books were done, completed in the laptop, done.
Mhm.
And my first poetry book, Reconstruction, that was on its way. And I started to really compile it after the breakup with my ex.
Mhm.
I was going through a phase of reconstruction. So that's where the book Reconstruction comes from.
Okay, nice.
That's my,
Nice. Oh, I love that cover.
yeah, and this is by my friend David Rodriguez. He's a painter.
Okay.
And it's funny because each of the book covers I saw before the books. So the paintings were already done years before my books came out. So when I was reconstruction started coming to my head, and it actually was birthed as a journal for a silent auction. So the first original book is in a moleskin journal on my friend's bookshelf because he won the silent auction.
Nice.
And it was a silent auction for literary artists. And I put all the poems, or most of the poems from the book, before it was a book, inside this journal I had. So let me put some artwork in here. So I started collaborating with artists, not knowing that's how my poetry books are going to look. So
Wow.
it's just crazy, like from moleskin journal to books.
Yeah.
And it sold at the auction for $100.
Nice.
And I was like, okay. And the lady who lost the bid said, where can I buy the book? And I was like, okay, I need to get on it
Yeah.
and start working on Reconstruction, the book. But then life happened. That was like 2008. And 2009, I moved back to the DC area. My mom and I had a plan. She was supposed to move down the road, be with me. And then a month to the date after I moved back, she was diagnosed with stage 4 ovarian cancer.
Mm-hmm.
The reconstruction got shelved and
Mm-hmm.
then he passed away. I was like, okay, shelved again.
Mm-hmm.
Then I got pregnant later that year, not knowing. I was like, man, I'm pregnant. That's not in the plans. Okay, so I tell you, Reconstruction came out during the darkest moments of Lyme disease. When I was bedridden, I
Mm.
was I was either in the bed or sitting up in a chair or the couch. I really could not stand for long. I feel like I was
Mhm.
going to pass out.
Mhm.
And I said, let me get my laptop. And I would just start pecking away and pulling it together. I called my team, the artist, the editor I met out there, who's a friend of mine now. I said, this might sound crazy, y'all, but I'm working on Reconstruction. And I said, I'm really ill, but this book has to be birthed because if I died today, I said, I have no books in my name. I want to leave a legacy for my son.
Mhm.
And they said, let's do it. And, so that was November 2012.
Mhm.
And Reconstruction was birthed June of 2014.
Nice.
It took time. I learned the self-publishing process in Dallas, another thing. Tons of workshops from all kinds of authors, including I went to a panel once that had Elin Harris, Omar Tyree, Zane, and Mary B. Morrison. They were all in the same panel.
Like all my favorites.
And it cost $30. I was like, people, this place should be packed from wall to wall.
Yes.
$30? And they were sharing how they each started as self-published authors and their stories, which were very raw, some of it was so funny, especially Elin Harris, and not knowing. I met him in 2008. A year and a couple of months later, he
He
passed
was
away.
past. Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, this, I just met this man.
Mm-hmm.
And what he poured into us was just, and in other workshops like that, and just time spent. So I just took what I learned
Yeah.
and I said,
Yeah.
I can do it. If they can do it, I
I
can
can
do
do.
it.
Yeah.
They taught me their
Yes.
mistakes. They said,
That
don't
is.
buy 5,000 copies. Where you going to put them? And so I remember one was like, I had to back my car out and put my books in the garage.
Mm.
And I had to now insulate my garage because it's not climate control. So she was talking
Right.
about all she could do. She was like, I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to get 5,000 copies of my book. Where am I putting them?
Mm-hmm.
So I learned a lot in Dallas. So that's where Reconstruction came from. This poetry book is Pieces of Life Volume 1, so it's part of a series.
Mm-hmm.
This talks about just the many levels of a relationship. So it talks about the first journey is, first act, I call it. You're in love. It's all great.
Honeymoon phase.
Her. It's just all,
Yeah.
just anything. You don't see anything wrong. And then the next two chapters talks about the transition from, okay, I was in love with this guy or this woman, and now something's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Something's not gelling between us. And then there's one called the aftermath. That's actually, and that's where the anger sits in. Like, I can't believe I was betrayed, lied to. And I was actually going through the feelings I went through between the guy, that moved me to Texas, but other relationships and how I felt. So I just poured it into Reconstruction. But the last chapter is the Reconstruction phase. So it's now time to sit down with yourself and it's time to heal. It's time to put together what you're supposed to be here to do.
Figure it out.
And really focus
Mm-hmm.
and really going back to your, you may go to church, but are you in church? You may be sitting in church, but are you listening to the word? Are you praying? Because we got some folks, they say they take up space in the pews, as my pastor says. Y'all hear, but you're
Facts.
not
You hear,
like,
but you're not here. You
here.
just here to see what you're gonna see and hear what you're gonna hear, but you ain't there for the
and you
right
go
reason.
back to doing the same thing. So, so that is part of that. Is rebuilding going back to your foundation and rebuilding it. So that's the Reconstruction phase. So that's Reconstruction in a nutshell. And then I took a break from the Pieces of Life series, and then I birthed Crying Tears of Teal. And this poetry book, and actually this is Ovarian Cancer Awareness Month when we're recording this. So it's in September. So it's Crying Tears of Teal. So that's another lovely book cover. It's also by David Rodriguez.
It's like the sunshine. Like I love how that looks like that. It looks like the sun.
And you know what? It's painted on wood. So the first one is painted on wood too, but you can't see it because it's really dark. But this one you can see the grain.
The grains of
and that's actual wood. I tell people that's not paint. He does a lot of his huge paintings. It's like an 8-foot painting too. It's all on wood. Wow. But what he did with this particular book, you can't see it, but he added a teardrop that's teal. Sure, he had a teardrop, but he made the teardrop teal, since the book is Crying Tears of Teal. And this book, I wrote a lot of it at my mother's bedside when she was sick with ovarian cancer. And I would just write. That's what artists do. We just kind of pour into our artistry.
Right.
It's therapeutic. And she would be asleep a lot, between chemo and the oral chemo drugs and all that stuff. And when she would wake up, she would say, oh, I see you wrote something. Can you read it to me? Or, And as the months went on, she says, you have to publish this one day. And I said, Mom, I don't know. This is like for me.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's for you. And she said, well, I appreciate that. But she was like, I need you to share this because it's going to help you. But it's going to help a lot of other people heal.
Yeah.
She's like, because it's a lot. You documenting our journey. She was like, through poetry. So I wrote about her journey. That's why actually it's not called chapters, it's called journeys. So journey 1, journey 2, journey 3. So that's the chapter.
Love
and
it.
I talk about the different stages that we went through. And actually other people went through too, just observing and talking to others that went through ovarian cancer as well. And I have a chapter dedicated solely to survivors. because there's a lot of survivors out there, thank God. They survived this cancer, they're thriving, they're living life. I have one poem called Living Life 155%. They are going above and beyond. They were given a second and third chance to live, and they're taking it. So that's what Crying Tears of Teal is. I actually work closely with the National Ovarian Cancer Coalition and their chapters, and they used to go out to like their run walks and, vend and sell books, and excuse the fire truck in the back, but actually have done workshops with some of the survivors as well. So they've actually hired me to do poetry workshops with the survivors, and I did my first one in May.
Okay.
And that was so rewarding and so emotional all at the same time. It was a beautiful workshop. Beautiful. We could have been there all night. It was like they were just writing poetry, and I'm like, y'all sure you never wrote poetry?
Right.
But it was a time for them to, like, a lot of them shared what they went through with their cancer battle through poetry.
Right.
And it was narrative poetry. So
I love it.
So I work with chapters, and I actually help spread awareness through this book as well. And I have like different facts and stuff throughout the book, and like I said, artwork from other friends. Then there's The Awakening that came out December 2019, and this book covers by my friend Ricky Johnson Atkins. It's beautiful. It is absolutely beautiful. This is on a canvas, and I told her if I knew, I would have known. Should have bought the canvas. Like I should have bought the piece. I didn't buy it. And of course, somebody bought it right at. I'm like, turn it.
And she didn't have any prints. She didn't have any prints.
Yeah, she has the prints, I think. So, but I wanted the original.
Yeah.
So The Awakening is Pieces of Life Volume 2. It's picking up from Volume 1. So it talks about, okay, I'm healing from this relationship. I'm healing, but life is still going on. And you can't stop life from happening as much as you want to just press a pause button and be like, let me just heal. Then come back to life later. So The Awakening talks all about different trials and tribulations, the ebbs and flow of life while you're healing. And, from, going through family matters and stuff like that. We can't stop the family matters that happen as much as we want to.
Right.
Other deaths that may happen. I lost a really close sorority sister of mine to domestic violence, and I'm like, this cannot be happening. I just saw her last year, and I wrote a poem about her. Employment blues. Okay, I gotta go to this job.
Yeah.
And they're not feeling me. I'm not feeling them, but I'm here. And even just getting into relationships while you're still healing, realizing this guy or this woman is not for me. So it goes through all that, but at the end is the awakening. It's, I'm healing. I have to get back to my artistry. For me, it's my artistry. I have to keep that in the forefront and keep doing what God wants me to do and stay on my destined path, no matter about the employment blues. I have a couple of poems about, me battling Lyme disease in here. So illnesses that crop up, being broke, just
hey, we all
stuff,
can
like,
relate to that. Yes.
Yeah, just being broke. Like, okay, I'm still trying to like birth a book here, but I'm broke. Okay. And I talk about just getting back into dancing and everything. And, it is the awakening. So you're still going through this healing process, but you are being awakened through it all. And awakening is whatever your purpose is. I tell people mine is artistry, health and wellness. But, for other people, it might be, I'm going to start that firm one day, or I'm going to start this restaurant. Or,
right.
Everybody's is different, but to keep that in the forefront and to not lose focus, because we could lose focus, but just to do a little something each day towards it would be the most minute thing, but that is the awakening. So those are all three of my poetry books. And the fourth one coming out is called Artist Paradise, Pieces of Life Volume 3. And that book is a complete, I tell people the poetry book is like a live artistic show. Every chapter is a dedication to different genres of the arts. So I talk about dancers, writers, poets, illustrators, sculptors, can't put everybody in there. That book would be volumes by
Oh,
itself. So
yeah, 10 volumes or more.
the 10 volumes just
Yeah.
on all the arts,
Uh-huh.
and just what it does for people and how people have fallen in love, over a song or with, So it's a really, I tell people when you read that book, you're going to feel like you're literally like at a show,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like all these different artists are performing for you when you're reading this book. So it's my dedication. Of course, I am an artist. So,
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, this is where it's at. So I went through my healing. I'm still healing. Healing is a continuous journey. You will always heal.
Yep.
Just keep healing. I tell people that's the whole thing. Self-care
Mm-hmm.
and the awakening. Yeah, I'm maneuvering through things.
Mm-hmm.
That job let me go. Thank you. And let me go and do what I need to do. And
Yeah.
my circle's getting smaller, so that's the awakening. And I've lost people, but they'll always be with me. Family matters, okay. Some of us, my blood, but we'll find ways to get along. Maybe we won't.
Right.
Okay, but Artist Paradise this is it. This is what I'm doing,
Mm-hmm.
whether y'all like it or not. I have a poem in there about it's ode to hip hop. I talk about hip hop artists. I talk about the B girls and the B boys, and I have one called Subway Stories. All the things I used to see on the subway
Yeah.
in New York. I
Uh-huh.
tell people that is theater and a show in itself. Just getting on the
Yes.
subway.
Mm-hmm.
You never know what you'll be entertained with that day. So,
Right.
so I have a whole poem just on the subway ride. So that's Artist Paradise. That comes out this November.
I love it. I love it. So tell the people how they can get a copy. Like how can they get the books and support you, connect with you, and all that good stuff?
Yes, yes. You can find me for my author side, my writer's hat. It's serenawills.com. Make it real easy. SerenaWills.com. And there you'll find my store. You'll find where I'm doing workshops. I have a blog on there. You can see videos and stuff like that. I have a YouTube channel, and I'm on Instagram and Twitter. I'm on Pinterest. And that's Divine Right. That's DIVINEWRYTE. And the name Divine Right came while I lived in Dallas, Texas. So much came out of
Dallas
Dallas.
was good to you.
It was good to me because I hear the horror stories when people move somewhere and they're like, girl, I wish my story was like that. I'm like, it could have been bad if I stayed in that relationship, but I'm glad it just ended. But people can find me at serenawills.com, getting back to that.
Mm-hmm.
And and on my YouTube channel, I have where I'm, doing spoken word, poetry, so you can like click on a video and be inspired. I'll leave you with a poem.
Is it called Serena Wills too?
Actually, no, my YouTube is Divine Right. So YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and Pinterest are all Divine Right. My Facebook page is Serena Wills. So it's like a / Serena Wills. But if you go like on my website, serenawills.com, you can go and you can find roadways to everything. YouTube, over here, over there. And then my health and wellness coaching practice is divinewryte.com. So that's DIVINEWRYTE. And that's Divine Right Wellness. And there you can find that. And since I have 2 websites, someone said I should do a workshop on websites because I developed my websites by myself. And
nice.
That was a whole, because the first website was an HTML code. I had someone hired to do it, but that's all they knew to do was code it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know coding.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way to redo my website was to tear it down and start from scratch.
Same.
And that was serenawills.com. And this was weeks before Crying Tears of Teal was coming out. I'm like, I have a book coming out next month, and I have to tear down my website, start all over. And it happens. I just went on YouTube, and I had the platform people walk me through some stuff, and I just built it page by page.
Yep.
For both websites. So if I could do it, took time. It took some tears too, but I did.
But you got them up there though. She has them up there. For anyone who is listening, who is afraid to get that website off the ground, do it. Just do it.
You need your own real estate on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
You need it. Social media is great, but remember when we had that it was like a blip, and it was.
But they was down for 24 hours, and we all freaked out.
People were spazzing out over here, and I'm like, it's all right.
Freaked out like that. I was just like trying to figure out what was going on because I was trying to get in, and I was like, what is going on?
when I realized it's okay, it's not just Instagram. And I
Mm-hmm.
started realizing, I said, oh, this Instagram, we got Facebook, it was the whole family.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, okay. And I said, this is where you need your website.
Yep.
Because if people can't find you on social media, they're like, all right, well, we'll just go on her website
Go
and
on the
buy her
website.
books.
Have an
Doing,
emailing list and all that good
yeah,
stuff too.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And some people don't have that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, oh, I just can't talk to her today or him. And you could be
Hey.
missing out on opportunities, business, anything,
Mhm.
because they can't
Anything.
find you.
Yep.
So you want to have your own little place on the internet, your own little home.
Right.
Sure y'all do that.
Right. Absolutely. Look, so I know what's next. You have the book coming out, but what else you
Yes.
have coming up? Like besides the book, what else you have coming up? Any new things you got going on for the wellness side?
Yeah, it's funny. So okay, with the wellness side, so in October, I meet with 3 chapters now, the National Ovarian Cancer Coalition. So it was 2. And it's funny because they're in completely different parts of the country. So
Mhm.
it's the Central Maryland chapter and the Midwest chapter. So they
Mm.
came together. So we had to strategically find a time that's going to work for everybody because we're in
Right.
2 different time zones. Well, now we have the Austin, Texas chapter coming in. They're like, we want to get in on this workshop too. So it's going to be 3 chapters. And I love these women so much. I met 2 of them when I went to the conference. I went to the National Ovarian Cancer Coalition conference
Mm.
in 2018.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I met quite a few of them. So, and then you meet more.
Mm-hmm.
So then they've told other chapters about me. And they're like, we can talk to Serena separately because we want to do a poetry workshop. So I integrate wellness within that because they're cancer survivors,
Nice.
and
Mm-hmm.
I told us the time to talk about, your health and what you went through and
Mm-hmm.
the stress and the self-care. You can pour all that into a poem.
Right.
So that's I kind of combine.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I've also been realizing that you could not have told me even 2 years ago that my health and wellness and my writing would combine
Mm-hmm.
one day to do joint activities. So I have workshops for health and wellness where I have writing prompts in there, and
I love
we
that.
do writing and lists, and I have a little poetry in there, and we're talking about stress, we're talking about mindful eating, or but it helps them to like just get it out of their mind and put it on paper. And then even with poetry and writing, I talk about health and wellness and how to have like a timeout.
Mm-hmm.
That's your self-care. You love to write, but you need to, put pauses in your schedule, which is your self-care. So you
Absolutely.
can write.
Yep.
So that's, with that, it's more of the workshop front. I'm always looking for clients, always looking for health and wellness clients. And folks can go on my website because I have particular we call them niches that I work with, so the workplace wellness community, just workplace period,
Mm-hmm.
particularly those who are trying to find that balance, or those who are at a very stressful job and they're like, I'm here all day, how can I take care of myself while I'm here at this desk or even virtually at home?
Right.
So I coach clients like that, just ways to put in self-care
Mm-hmm.
throughout your day. It could be a 5-minute meditation in the bathroom. I
Right.
mean, just do something,
Something.
take an
Mm-hmm.
extra lap around before you walk back from lunch,
Mm-hmm.
and just
Mm-hmm. And
breathe,
it can be very simple. A lot of people
very
think that it's
simple.
hard. It's very simple.
It's really not hard. And I had to think that, like, I'm thinking self-care, I got to take a class. No, you
No.
don't. I have to go on a video. No, you have to do that.
Mm-mm.
So just building, because that is constant building. So
Mm-hmm.
trying to get clientele up, and that aspect. So that's what's on the health and wellness front.
Nice.
And just putting myself out there more.
Mm-hmm.
So people know what I offer because they're like, you offer workplace wellness programs.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
we need to talk to you, girl.
Yeah.
Like, let's help your
Nice.
staff de-stress. Okay,
Exactly.
like everybody.
It's a need for it. I'm telling you, it is a need for
Oh,
it. Mm-hmm.
yeah, it was a need before this pandemic. It really, people are working more at
Mm-hmm.
home.
Yeah.
So I'm home in my office and I'm trapped. I feel like I'm trapped and I'm home.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I heard from some people, like, I'm home, but how do I feel trapped?
I
So I'm
don't
like,
know.
you
That's a
should make,
hard one right there. Yeah, you
you
gotta
should, you really,
incorporate more self-care.
yeah, you have
Mhm.
to. So you got to get up, walk around and take those breaks and
And then
you know,
and
that.
then like get up and get dressed like you going to work and don't stay around in your sleeping clothes all day. So you could
Yeah.
differentiate the two. So,
Yep. Yep.
yeah.
Yep. Like I'm dressed when I'm working virtually. I'm dressed, you know, from
Mhm.
head to toe. Man, well, just my socks, but it's okay.
Right.
It's okay. And then with the writing after November, like I said, I have books in my laptop. So next year, I'm trying to pump out a couple of books.
Okay.
So
Same.
one will be a poetry book, and then the other, which has been a work in progress for years, is my memoir on Lyme disease. Every year I think is coming out, is not
We
ready to
have
come
so
out.
much in common.
It's like
I've been writing my
the
memoir and it's done. It's just not published yet. I wanted to put it out last year, but I think I'm gonna
mm-hmm.
try to put it out this coming January because I turned 45 in
Yeah.
January. And so I'm like, okay, so
Hey,
that'll
that's right,
be
because we're gonna
yeah.
we're gonna celebrate. It's
Yes.
right. We're gonna do the IG live in January. We're gonna come back with our crowns and tiaras and sashes. Yeah. And
Absolutely.
but
Right.
it's so funny
Absolutely.
because it was always something missing with that book. And
Mm.
I would always think I was done. And I'd like just it was just last year, I was like, how am I missing a chapter on what I went through with my central nervous system? That's a whole chapter in itself.
Mm-hmm.
But then I started trying to like push things in there. And then I have a friend, shout out to Nicole Waldron. I met her. She's in Canada. I met her through the Dr. Vibe show. So many people you meet through like virtually. You know
Uh-huh.
how we met. You know,
Uh-huh.
never met physically a day in our lives, but I
Right.
know you.
Right.
And she was the one. She put a pin in it. She was like, Serena, you have to stop because this book is more than just one book. She was like, it should just be like from this time period to this. And she said the whole pandemic is a book in itself,
Yeah.
like what you went through health wise
Yeah.
and just all that. Because I was trying to fit that in this book.
Oh,
And she
that book
said,
will be
no,
1,000
no.
pages.
She was like, you'll still have, you already have chapter what? She was like, no. She said, you got to put a pin in it and to be continued.
Yep.
And that was it. That was like, okay, I can turn off this book and be done.
Yeah.
So now it's a matter of flushing it out. So I'm going through chapter by chapter, which is hard.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like reliving the moments of really
Mm-hmm.
being sick with
Yeah.
Lyme disease. And
Yeah.
that's a lot to
I bet. Mm-hmm.
so that's what I'm going through. And just
Okay.
taking my time, just
Take
bit by bit by bit.
Yeah, and I had to learn how to slow down when it comes to writing because at the end of the day, you want it to be impactful.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so people can tell when it's rushed, they can tell when it's not authentic. And that was my thing.
Yeah.
I was just trying to get it out because I said,
Yeah.
okay, God, if I'm gonna tell the story, I need to go ahead and get it out while I'm wanting to do that. But he's like, no,
Yeah.
you're gonna do it in my time and it's gonna be
Yeah.
good. Yep. So
Yeah. Because I thought it was gonna come out like 3 years ago. And it
mm,
was like, no, you know, the Awakening is supposed to come out 2019. So okay, so it'll come out in 2020.
mm-hmm.
No, it's you know, and it was like, and it just keeps going, going, going. So I'm like, okay, now that I know the book is done, it's just a matter of flushing out,
Right.
you know. And but it's going to take time because it's
Mm-hmm.
highly emotional to flush it out.
Yep. Well, take your time and listen. I appreciate you coming to stop by to kick it with me today. But
Thank you.
I always ask
Thank
this
you.
question before I let anybody go. And thank you for listeners for tuning in. I always do this question called on a personal note.
Uh-oh.
Okay. And it's not a hard question. If your now self can tell your younger self something
Mm,
about your journey,
wow.
what would it be and why?
Wow. Okay. So the now self would have forewarned back then. You're going to fall into this pattern. And this is a whole other conversation. Pattern when it comes to relationship and men.
Mm,
And we need you to realize this pattern is a cycle that needs to be broken. You
mm,
know, it was something that it took the pandemic to realize that I inherited part of the pattern from my mother. You know, she was a single mom as well, and you know, went through some trying relationships with
mm,
my father, with
mm,
a couple other guys, and really trying. But it was a pattern, you know, and I didn't even notice until this pandemic that I
mm,
was kind of in a similar pattern that my mother was once in.
mm,
Except I would cut the relationships, they would just be cut off or done. You know, she would try to just keep, she was the one that would work on it, And so it's like, no, I'm done. And I always asked her because she was single, she was never married. And I was like, do you have any regrets? These are the conversations that we had, when she was sick. And she was like, she said, remember that guy you told me I should have he came back for me and you were like, why didn't you go with him? And she was like, I should have gave him a chance. Because she said he would have broke the cycle.
Wow.
And I'm thinking that's her cycle, not knowing I inherited the same kind of cycle. So I would tell my younger self, look, take your time. Take your time. When it comes to relationships, everything looks so wonderful in the first few weeks of the first couple of months, the first few months. Just really take your time and really become friends before you move to like the relationship level, because you may not even move to the next level. You may say, I can't. And that's what I would tell my younger self, and to really focus. Be like, yeah, you're going to lose some focus in your 20s. You may have to get shipped out, to Texas for a little while. It's okay. But, that was a blessing to go out to Dallas. But there's going to be so much greater for you later on, But really with that relationship thing, tell them, just, they're going to make everything look so good and easy. And,
don't fall for it, girl.
Don't fall for it. Just take your time and just enjoy life and enjoy being single. Like, I'm glad that I would take breaks, but sometimes I didn't take long enough breaks, but this last one, I made sure. I mean, I think Lyme disease really made me like pause. But it was between my son's father, and I think I dated a guy for a couple of months. That didn't work. And it didn't go anywhere. But I was single for over 10 years. So, so just started dating again earlier this year. And I'm like, this is strange. And then it's like a new me, it's like the boundaries have been set. I know what I will tolerate, what I will not tolerate, and I just love me so much more.
Right.
So
absolutely.
That's what I would also tell my younger self, like really love you, and love you inside and out, regardless of who says what, So that's what I would definitely tell my younger self.
I
Maybe on the
loved it.
relationship front for sure. Like, let me save you some heartbreaks, okay?
Right. I think, I mean, I haven't had a whole lot of heartbreaks, but that's awesome. That's the first time I've heard someone say that with their answer by doing that. So that's awesome. And I love to ask that question because I want to hear everybody's answer. So that's the question that I ask before we leave the actual conversation. So I love that. I love your answer.
Love it.
Yes.
Love it.
So yes, it has been a pleasure kicking it with you. I appreciate it. It's been a minute because we've been trying to the scheduling and stuff, man.
Oh yeah, and I was like, the devil is a lie. That week when I lost my voice, that week was just. I said, "What is going on, God? What is really happening?" Okay. I was like, it's August and I'm losing. Like my voice just went out, and I'm like, okay, sleeping with the air conditioning, I can't do that anymore.
Right.
But I mean, for it to be completely gone for 3 days, and my job is, I tell people you have to, while you're building your practices and your my books, and you have to have a job. So one of my jobs is I'm a virtual customer service agent for now. You need your voice. So I couldn't talk. So I had to like give up 3 days. I said, okay, God, you're doing something. Because there's to lose my voice in the middle of the summer, and then a storm came through and have power. So I was like, okay, I said, I got my voice back, but now I have no power.
Right.
We wouldn't be able to do it anyway because I had no power. I was like, this doesn't, and lost power twice that week. I said, you know what? And then by the end of the week, I said, I'm going to New York to see my family. I'm going to leave all this behind. The lost voice, the no power, other challenges being thrown at me.
Like adversity, because this has been an amazing conversation. And whenever whenever you have something that you have to put out there that's going to impact a lot of people in a positive way, you always have some type of adversity. It
Yeah.
always try to throw it off.
Yes.
So I'm
Yes.
just
And
glad that we were able to have our time together and it wasn't rushed. We had a great conversation. I pray that it impacts somebody's life in a positive way. That's how I always
yeah.
have guests on my show, and that's the overall purpose of starting the podcast. I want to leave people better after they come in and
Mhm.
start listening to the episodes. I want them to feel good
Wow.
and feel better. So yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, I appreciate you stopping by. Thank you for
Thank
all the
you.
people who have tuned in. You guys, y'all know I love y'all. I wouldn't be me without you. I wouldn't be here without you tuning in. Make sure y'all subscribe to the YouTube channel. New episodes of the podcast drop every Thursday. Um, until then, y'all be blessed and be awesome. Love yourself enough to know when somebody else is not. And with that being said, see you later.